I'm back. It's Topazzle, and I'm here with you today with the Electron Machinedrum SPS 1 UW Plus. Now I've had this for a little while, and but up until recently, about within the last couple of weeks, I've been really diving into it, trying to understand it and get used to it. What really caught my eye about this is that this is a synthesizer drum machine. So you actually can really play around with the synthesis of making drum machines, drum sounds basically. And it's analog, so that's a big plus. And another really big plus is that it's a sampler too, kind of like a rolling guy. And I also have a Korg Electron, not Electron, but Electribe too. So I've had that for about going on 2 years now, and I really like that machine. So when it was coming around that I was going to pick something else up, it took me a while. Yeah, I had quite a few choices to choose from. It builds off of the old school style of analog drum sounds, and it's packed into one box. This one, of course, is the sampling machine, so you could sample too, and I'm really getting used to that also too. And that's one quick thing I wanted to go over in this video. If you're looking to, if you have an interest of picking one of these up, and it's the sampler versions, which is the UW or the UW Plus. If you're gonna be looking used, make sure that you're gonna have this MIDI adapter. It makes it really easier to load up your samples. It's well worth it, especially if it comes with one of these, because I mean, this was basically made for the Machinedrum. It's made by Electron. It has the turbo on it too, so there's less mistakes on loading up samples. And you're going to need 2 MIDI cables, because you're going to have to go in and out and plug those two into the Machinedrum. And of course it's USB. You plug it into your computer and you're good to go. There's a little software, it's called C6. You can download it from the Electron website. I recommend using that, of course. It's made by Electron for loading your samples. It's really easy. It's really easy to configure. You just load your samples up and you just drop them right into that software, and then you pick which one you select which file you want to send over to the Machinedrum, and you press send, and it's as easy as that. If you're looking for a Machinedrum and it happens not to come with one of these, one of the turbo MIDI adapter, that's still fine. You can still use a MIDI adapter. I think mostly any type of MIDI adapter. I haven't tested any others out other than this, so I don't know exactly how they work, but from what is explained on the website, you could use another MIDI adapter as long as there's an in and out, because you're going to be plugging both of those into the machine in order to send samples over. So and if you're going to be using a different MIDI adapter, make sure you do use the C6 software. It's there on Electron's site. It's real easy to download, it's free, and it makes it way easier to send over your samples. Even if they're wave, mostly everything that I have is wave, so I've tested it out with wave. It converts it real easily. Once you press that send button, it already converts it automatically. And but another thing though is that there's not a lot of space inside of one of these to send samples, so it doesn't store a lot of samples. This right here is the UW Plus. So what actually is inside here, let's see, let's turn this thing on. It took me a while to get used to the way everything works with Electron. Coming from Roland and Korg, this is totally different. You have snapshots, so you can make patterns and you can save patterns. You have 4 banks here times 2, so there's actually 8 banks. So you have 8 banks of 16 tracks. So let's see, 16 patterns. So like right here, I select A, and I already have a pattern right here. But if I had more patterns, all of these would be lit up. So in each little bank section, there's 8 of them, you have 16 patterns that you could store in each one. So that's pretty cool. You get a lot. And so when you save stuff, it usually automatically saves, but once you build a pattern, the first thing you want to do in order to save that pattern exactly how it is basically you're going to take a picture of which they call a snapshot, and it's going to save it. So like, let's say if I already worked on a pattern, you're going to press function, global, you choose your slots, because you have other slots here, global slots. You have 8 of them. Right now I'm working on 1. So it's really expanded on what you can save, but I'm on slot 1, so I'm going to save it in here. And then you go to File, over down to Snapshots, and you could, let's see, I'm going to save it, and then you press Save, save your snapshot, and you have up to how many snapshots again? Over 100. I think it's 127, 128. So you can save up to 128 snapshots inside of this slot. So so you have 8 slots. Inside of each slot you can save up to 128 snapshots, which is pretty much what's inside of a snapshot is 8 banks of 16 patterns. So in each bank there's 16 patterns. So 16 times 8, blah blah blah. You can see, just like your snapshots, you also have your sample banks. See, your plus drive, snapshots, and sample banks. So you choose a sample bank. So you have 128 sample banks. Inside of each sample bank you can store up to 48 samples. Now each sample bank has a total of 2.5 megabytes of storing memory for your samples. So you don't just have 2.5 megabytes of storage space for just in this one box. You actually have 2.5 megabytes times 48 of sample space. So a sample bank is going to store your samples, but like I mentioned, inside of each sample bank you have 2.5 megabytes of storing space. So what you're going to have to do with like your samples before you transfer them over with this inside the Machinedrum is go inside of one of your DAWs, or like what I'm using WaveLab, and you just downsize your sample. It's still 16-bit, but I downsized the sample rate. I think it's like 2200 or 2100 instead of 48 or 44. So you're going to have to downsize your sample because you're not going to be able to load up, like a 1 megabyte sample. You want to, lower it down to kilobytes, and not megabytes. So try to downsize your sample as much as you can. Try to keep it at 16-bit though, because when you transfer it over, it's going to be about 16-bit inside of here anyways. I think 16-bit or 12-bit. So just work with the 16-bit sample and send it right over, but downsize the sample rate at least in a DAW or something like WaveLab, which is what I'm using, and it's really easy in WaveLab, quick and easy. And then you can send your samples over. Another quick tip: when you're sending samples over, because the manual is a little bit confusing, especially coming from a newbie. It's a little bit confusing because you're learning a whole new language, which is the Electron language. Especially someone like myself coming from like Korg and a Roland user. So the manual may get a little confusing, but there are some things that they don't really explain so well in the manual, but it's still good to have the manual and read it over so you can have an understanding of what they're trying to tell you. But I found what's really quick and a little bit easier, I would say it's more easier instead of quick, especially if you're learning how to sending files into the Electron Machinedrum so they do fit. You're going to want to set up a new snapshot, and inside of that new snapshot, a new sample bank. You're going to choose all that, and then you're going to name it too. And then you're going to go back inside of it, and then from there, inside of that new snapshot, let's go inside here. I'm in Global 1 slot. This is like if I'm going to be sending samples into the Machinedrum. I already have a new snapshot and a new sample bank already set up to receive my my files or my samples, and I'm going to send. So this is like the next step I'm going to be doing. So you would go to Sample Manager, and you're going to go into Receive. These are all your little slots. You have 48 slots here. So you, from inside of C6, which is the software to use to send your samples made by Electron, you're going to select the sample. It's going to be blue, and you're going to select it, and you're going to be sending your samples one by one. So select one sample, and then you're going to select where it's going to go into a sample slot. There's 48 of them. So just choose one. Like my next empty one, I already have 10 samples in here, so my next sample would be 11. It's empty, and I'm in receive mode, and once I choose my sample slot, I press enter, and this blinking word here, waiting, is letting me know that the Machinedrum is waiting for me to send the sample. So I'm going to select one sample, highlight it, and I'm going to press send, and it's going to send it. And then once it's done and it's loaded, why it's easier doing it this way is because once it's loaded and the Machinedrum receives your sample, right here is going to show you the percentage used. So you're going to know exactly about how much space you still have used to send the samples that you want to send. So like right here, I have 10 samples sent in, and I'm in 75% used. So that right there, I know, I have an estimate inside my head of like how much I still have of space. So 75% of 2.5 megabytes, I would think I have about, maybe about a half a megabyte left of sample space inside this sample bank, sample bank 1. So by knowing that, if I have my, I have my C6 program loaded in my computer, and if I have some samples sitting here that I want to send, I could just pick and choose by the size of those samples, knowing that I have about a half a megabyte left. I could just pick and choose, looking at those sample sizes of, which ones I want to send over, because I know I have about, half a megabyte left. And then that makes it real easier instead of just trying to send all the samples all at once, and then once it's all loaded up, I come to find out I only have, out of 10 samples I really want to send, if I send them all, try to send them all at once, maybe only like about 4 or 5 samples get sent, and then I'm left there trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to fix this? So actually sending them one by one is actually a little bit easier, because after you send one file, you're going to know how much percentage space you still have left. So that makes it way easier. I think it's an easier way of doing it, and I'm sending that out as a quick tip. So I'm still a newbie on this. Sorry if I don't sound so clear about, or maybe I kind of confused you guys about how to use this, but the terminology of this, of the Electron gear, especially the Machinedrum, I'm still getting used to, but I am coming along and I'm learning it. But I wanted to send out that quick tip because you don't really see any tips about how to load samples into the Machinedrum, and the ones that I did find are basically like the same ones that are explained like in the manual, which is good. It works, but it's a little bit confusing, especially if you're new to this and you're trying to send all these samples into the Machinedrum, and then you come to find out only 2 or 3 of them got loaded in. So it's real way easier if you send them one by one, because after you send one, like I explained, which is the big tip, is that after you send one, it'll tell you right there that you have about 75 or the percentage rate that's still left in there. And another quick tip, there's 2.5 megabytes of storage space inside each sample bank. So you can actually load quite a few samples inside the Machinedrum. It's just that, when you're using the machine and you're loading up your samples to play, you're going to be going into your sample bank to be loading them up, and you're going to be using the sample bank of 2.5 megabytes for that pattern. So that's it. So that's my quick tip. I'm going to be having more videos about the Machinedrum later on, and I'll see you next time.